I was unfortunately trafficked. I was one of those stories that you hear. I was taken. And there's always like a misconception of what trafficking looks like. Trafficking can be manipulation. It can be born out of fear.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Legacy Podcast, and I'm your host, Raisa Afrida. Today's episode is presented by MCG Career College. Some of the most serious struggles don't look dramatic from outside. They look like someone showing up to work exhausted, pulling away from friends, losing confidence, or quietly falling apart while still saying, "I'm fine." Today's guest is someone who's making sure those stories don't stay invisible and helping women, families, and workplaces respond with real awareness, real tools, and real support. Our guest today is Teena Nessa, an international life coach, speaker, and advocate dedicated to empowering women, strengthening families, and supporting organizations in addressing the hidden challenges that impact individuals and communities. Teena's work is rooted in lived experience and professional insight, bridging the gap between personal healing, prevention, and meaningful systematic change. She supports women and single mothers navigating trauma, abuse, and life transitions, youth and families who need safe and empowering spaces, and organizations and frontline teams seeking greater awareness around domestic abuse, cultural dynamics, and workplace well-being. Teena is also a survivor of trafficking, forced marriage, and honor-based abuse, and what was meant to break her became the foundation of her purpose. Before moving fully into coaching and advocacy, Teena broke barriers as one of Canada's first female executive protection officers in a political environment, serving and protecting the first female mayor of Calgary, and working in high-level security, investigations, and risk awareness. Today, through coaching programs, speaking engagements, and initiatives like Hidden Struggles in the Workplace, Teena helps individuals move from survival to strength, and helps organizations recognize early warning signs of distress, burnout, and abuse so people can be supported before they break. So Teena, welcome to the Legacy Podcast. I'm really happy to have you here today. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's just such an honor to be here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for making the time for us. Well, your story is going to inspire so many other women and people out there. So let's begin.
Ready when you are.
For people meeting you for the first time, who is Teena Nessa and what's your mission in one sentence?
So I'm somebody that is actually bridging the gap as a voice to the voiceless. I am an international life coach, a speaker, an advocate, and also I'm passionate about helping women and helping women to and families and organization from surviving to empowerment, and that is through awareness. It's through healing. It's through intervention, prevention, and purpose.
That's beautiful. And I am so lucky to have you here because the first time I heard your story was on the stage in the city of Calgary. And it was such an honor to have you there. We would get to know more about you as we go through our questions. And I hope you really enjoy our podcast.
Thank you.
Well, Teena, you talk about hidden struggles. What are common signs someone is not okay, even if they look like they're fine?
Well, a lot of people function and they seem to be okay, like you said, but really inside they're actually struggling. And the signs are pretty subtle. Like it could be just drifting away, anxiety, just withdrawing. And also very often will say, "Oh, I'm fine," all the time. So because of certain things like that, we need to educate and show that these signs are actually pretty visible.
Mm-hmm. And if you were to give some examples that the people you see at workplace, what examples would you give?
It would be something like if they finally, like if they withdraw themselves and you notice certain patterns and behavior. So these are some of the signs that to watch out for. Because I'm like an executive protection, and I actually, with other people, you can notice patterns and also body languages.
Interesting. Well, you are a pro in that. That's for sure. But I also want to add that a lot of people don't know how to talk about abuse safely. So if you get to see that you see those patterns, how would you encourage those people to speak about that?
Very so often, a lot of people wouldn't speak about it because they have a lot of fear and a lot of shame. But however, if you're in an environment where you make the place safe enough, private enough, without judgment, then that will actually give the person a little bit more confident in approaching. But it's very important to be compassionate, because compassionate will open those doors where people will break those barriers and go into safety.
I see. Well, that leads to my next question is, what's the difference between supporting someone and accidentally making it harder for them?
Well, the harder part is actually unintentionally not to force yourself with advice, because that could just push people away.
Sometimes I think listening without judgment is one of the best things you can do.
Yes, absolutely. Because, one of the things that I've experienced is a lot of that time, like the judgment part, is very crucial, because listening is one of the keys, which actually then again leads to that compassion compartment. That compassion where you will find the other person will just naturally kind of open up.
That's so true. Well, I do want our listeners to know about a little bit about your story of resilience. You've lived through trafficking, forced marriage, and honor-based abuse. Can you tell us a little bit about your story and what helped you move from survival to strength?
Well, I was actually grew up in the UK, so I was born and raised up in a very strict cultural family, and a lot of people don't actually understand about just a female growing up in those cultures. It's not like that for everybody, but when you're in such an environment, there's such a big control. So as a young girl, I never experienced my voice to be my voice. My choices were never my choice. It was actually controlled, not just by my family, but with the community. So yes, like we mentioned, I was unfortunately trafficked. I was one of those stories that you hear. I was taken, and there's always like a misconception of what trafficking looks like. Trafficking can be manipulation. It can be born out of fear, So yeah, I was taken and was put into a forced arranged child marriage. And I look back and I think of how many quite so often people would ask me, how did you survive that? Sometimes I look back and I think about hope. So hope was the only strength that I had, and that hope gave me faith. So I hang on to for myself, which helped me to be resilient and perseverant, because I knew that I can, through that pain and purpose, I can actually help others to overcome certain things that they're going through too.
Wow. You know what? Your story just is so remarkable, because I do understand a little bit of some part of it, which is I am from Bangladesh, right? And I do hear those stories where certain part of Bangladesh, we do see women getting forced to marriage when they are just a child, whether it's like a 17-year-old or even young as 15 or 16. And they don't have the maturity to make those decisions. It's their parents, their family, the whole village goes for this wedding, and you just don't know what to do. You go with the flow, and then life is so much harder once you realize what just happened to you. So you surviving that, coming out of it, and telling your story is definitely going to inspire so many other women who is out there and so many other families to educate them that, hey, this is wrong. You cannot do that. So thank you so much for being that voice for the voiceless.
Thank you.
Now, my next question to you, Teena, is what are the biggest misconceptions people have about honor-based abuse, like forced marriage or trafficking?
Well, one of the biggest misconception is people that, often think that it happens overseas and in communities, but honor-based violence is everywhere. It can happen in any religion, any culture, and any location. So that's one of the misconceptions. And in regards to trafficking, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people would think trafficking is like a stranger kidnapping you, but also trafficking is a form of manipulation, again, forced into the community. So it's a lot of fear, a lot of shame, but also trafficking can be led by normally with the victim that normally knows somebody. So that's another misconception, how people see trafficking.
Wow. And this is happening here in Canada too?
You'll be surprised. There are stats in Canada that there are like stats that are risen and hidden, but it's all about the awareness. We need to make that awareness. We need to educate the system and how to also approach cultural communities.
And for those people who are our listeners and audience who do not understand what honor-based abuse or even honor-based killing is, how do you explain to them?
So what I will do is just explain the difference between domestic violence and honor-based violence. So domestic violence is actually initiated, which we will hear, it's normally with one person, could be your spouse, right? But with honor-based violence, it's actually initiated through the whole community.
Yes.
So it's just more than one person. Now, it's not just the spouse, but then you have the community, the other family members. So that is the difference. And it's also very controlled. So you do not have freedom to have a choice in what you say or how you act or where you need to go. You're always monitored.
Yeah, I can. Oh, wow, this is tough. I am in Canada now, and I'm so grateful to live here. I am actually married to a Canadian guy who's born and raised here, who has a different faith. But many people in our culture, many girls are not allowed to marry someone from a different faith or different ethnicity, could be also in the same religion, but there is a different sect of different religions, right? So it's so complex for people to understand sometimes, but it is happening that many people do not take it nicely and they say, you cannot marry this boy that you really dearly love, even though there's nothing wrong with the person, right? And then not only the parents, the relatives, neighbors, they get involved and they shame that person that you have done a very bad thing. Now you should be punished. And in cases I have heard in UK where a lot of women have been killed by their own families. So this is extremely scary that this is happening in first world countries. It's not just something happening in developing countries or third world countries. Now, you were one of Canada's first female executive protection officers in a political environment. What did that teach you about risk patterns and reading situations early?
Well, visibility, the risk, it's actually visible before the risk crisis actually happens. So those things are visible. So what I've learned throughout my experience, I've learned how to scope environment. I've learned to profile. I've learned to read body languages, like we said, and also patterns and just reading the environment and the behavioral patterns on certain people. So that actually comes with experience. So you get to learn how these patterns occur in certain behaviors.
And how did you feel to be the first female?
It was such a privilege and honor. I didn't really realize, but it's I feel so grateful. It's such a grateful honor for myself, and it's a legacy that I can pass on to my grandkids. And being diverse woman, looking after a diversity leader of Calgary, even in itself, that was an honor because of my background. I wasn't. I didn't think that I would be somebody that will be face fronted and bodyguarding city mayor of Calgary, who was also the first female.
That's amazing. Two first females. That's great. You know what? It is very important to be visible, because when we see someone like you out there, we have more hope that, okay, if Teena can do it, maybe we can do it too.
Yeah, it's just such a privilege, right, to be a woman of diverse and color, because a lot of it just shows like we are open and we provide that gateway for other women, that, it's just a breakthrough for other women to see what the options are out there as well. Instead of just hiding, So you have like that armor. You feel like a lot of girls feel that worthiness back. So it's really it's such a privilege.
That's really nice to know, Teena. Now let's talk workplace. How do abuse, trauma, and chronic stress show up at work in ways people often miss?
A lot of the time it happens through absenteeism. It happens through withdrawing. You'll notice the employees try to withdraw, and again, their behavior, part of the biggest one would be withdrawal, and also just their, again, it's their body language, the pattern, and those are some of those red flags, the common red flags that you would notice.
And if someone notices that, okay, for example, I'm a manager and I see that in my team, one of the team members, what's the best first approach and what should I not do?
Basically, the first step is to build that safe space, a private, non-judgmental conversation. And you should handle this with compassion and not with interrogation.
That's good to know, because sometimes I do have the tendency to ask too many questions that could be personal because I care, but not everyone might be comfortable to speak up about it. Just hearing the person would be better. Now, is there any other advice that you would like to give to people who are handling diverse group of employees? Because not all the people might have understanding of this type of, honor-based abuse or certain type of cultural aspects.
Well, I work alongside with my partner with workshop, Flourishing Workplace. And what we've done as well, because and I've actually been in that situation with hidden struggles. So we've built this proactive framework exactly for certain things like that, the building basically what is the gap and the bridge that is missing. So what you want to do before, it's the very first steps coming from, the initial steps, like I'm just noticing what are the very first signs before even kind of like referring them to counseling or therapy. There's always that missing gap. So we've actually built a framework and it's a proactive framework that actually shows employees, management, on before they actually onboard staff, on how to, it's a step-by-step guide on how to follow a process. So we have worked on an actual initiative program, a framework, which we would love to kind of do workshops in certain organizations and communities, and just to show like that kind of what we've actually built is to prevent those kind of awareness.
Good to know. Well, you are not only speaking at different places, but you actually have built your career based on this so that you can protect other people. So that is absolutely amazing. Now, Teena, there is a little bit of lighter type of question this time. That is something, what is It's about, like there are things where it could be a myth where you hear it all the time. So tell me about that one misconception that you keep hearing, and now you're like, you know what? Let's pause and let's clear this era. What is that one misconception people have?
I think one of the myths that you were saying, I think for me, people often think the strongest people don't struggle. But actually, the strongest people have the heaviest stories of struggle. And it's very so often that, with people like that, although they are broken, they don't often show it on the outskirts, but they are actually kind of like fighting it internally and silently. So just because, you're strong, it's okay to have that healing, because strength is actually a courage. It's not a weakness.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I hear you on that one too. A lot of women who are strong, and also men who are, in position of power, many of the time, people forget that they also need healing. They also need to take a break.
Yeah, and people often think, when they go for healing, it's some form of weakness, but actually, healing is actually it's a strength of courage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, now my next question is, what's one small daily habit that helps you stay grounded while doing heavy work and holding heavy stories?
Well, biggest thing for me is my faith. I have time to reflect and pray and do affirmations, and also that kind of keeps me grounded and gives me boundaries. There's things like go for a walk or just being active, and just so that I can also reevaluate myself and just think about my own well-being.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Teena. Definitely faith can help to heal. Mm-hmm. Now, I do know that there is another person who is Teena Nessa in personal life. Who that person is?
Well, I'm just somebody. I'm actually a mom as well. I have 2 young adult children, a boy and a girl, and I do everything like but obviously my kids are grown up, mm-hmm. So I'm a single mom as well, mm-hmm. And I show my kids. I just want to say one thing. Although all those things have happened in the past, I've shared those stories with my kids, but what I want to teach them is the resilience, is the perseverance, that your past does not define your future. It does not disqualify your purpose. So it's one of those things, no matter how tough life gets, you have to keep pushing, but it's also a strength to show your children not to never give up.
Wow, that's amazing. And you know what? It feels like you're leaving behind a legacy for them. Now, I do want to ask you the last question, and this is my most favorite question of my podcast, is that our podcast name is the Legacy Podcast. Mm-hmm. We bring in very inspiring people from the community who leaves behind a positive legacy. What would be your legacy, not only for your children, but for the whole community?
But what I want to say, that hidden struggle is real. It takes one person for a real conversation, a real safe person, and also a moment of compassion that can actually change lives. Also, I just want to say that, never be too afraid to speak. And healing is a strength. Awareness creates positivity. And also healing and compassion creates change.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God. Thank you so much for sharing that, Teena. And thank you so much for being here today. It is very important that whatever you're doing today, it's going to protect our community, not only in Canada, but across the world where our audience and listeners are. So thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you for having me, Raisa.
Great. Now, our audience, as you have heard Teena's beautiful words of resilience and also story of struggle, if you want to reach out to her for her workshop or just to ask some advice, you can definitely reach out to her on her LinkedIn. So look up Teena Nessa and shoot her a message and get to see how amazing person she is. I will be back with another episode with another inspiring community leader. But till then, please hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and share. And please make sure to make communities great, because that is what MCG's mission statement is. MCG, making communities great.
MCG, making communities great.